Hey, before I kick off the podcast, I just want to shout out Next Door Clothing. Next Door, a clothing brand based out of Bondi in Sydney. They're making really nice jeans and shirts and hats. So go and check out their full range at nextdoorsydney.com. They're also artists, so you can go and check out a range of art. They put on rad parties, and I love what they're doing. So nextdoorsydney.com for the full range.
I'm having a good time.
You are?
Yeah.
I can tell.
We are rolling too.
Terrible Happy Talks. Terrible Happy Talks. Terrible Happy Talks. Terrible Happy Talks. Today's guest is Orin Hardy. Orin is a husband to his wife Maria, educator and social entrepreneur. He's the co-founder of the Cool Farm and Bamboo U, two globally recognized hands-on education enterprises based in Bali. Orin dedicates his time to creating spaces and opening up new possibilities for people to learn how to incorporate sustainability into their lives. Combining his international expertise with local knowledge, Orin facilitates and teaches courses related to hands-on living, permaculture design, gardening and bamboo construction. Orin was raised in a Balinese village surrounded by rivers and jungle. He then moved to North America where he witnessed the disconnect between humans and nature in the modern world. He now spends his time devoted to reconnecting people to nature. Orin has just returned from India, where he was a guest speaker at Inc. 2019, a conference that provides a collaborative platform for innovation focused on cultivating leaders from diverse disciplines. Today, Orin is with me to share his journey, experiences, challenges, and hopes for the future. Orin Hardy, welcome.
Hello, hello.
How are you, brother?
I'm good.
Dude, the last month of your life has been busy, hey? You've been traveling around the globe.
Yeah, there's been a bit of movement going on.
Yeah.
This year has been a lot more travel than somebody like me likes. I tend to be quite sedentary. At least I want to be. My life doesn't actually allow for it sometimes, so I end up moving around quite a lot.
You don't actually enjoy the international travel so much, yeah?
I mean, I like it, but I also enjoy being in one place.
In your space?
Yeah, it's settling, you know.
Yeah,
moving around is like, whoa, what's going on in the world?
Yeah. I'm sort of at a point where, like, I just can't handle the processing that you have to go through at airports anymore. Like, I just find it so, I don't know, I feel like I'm cattle being herded through security and all that stuff. It's
pretty intense.
Yeah, man. So, like, let's I'm really curious about your talk in India at the Ink. They're called the Inkwell Talks. Is that right?
Ink Talks.
Ink Talks.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a little bit like an Indian TED, where they are very focused on bringing mostly Indian, but also international people together to talk about their ideas for the future. So this year, their theme was within and beyond. So it was a very interesting conference. They did it in a really beautiful location in Jaisalmer, and the talks were actually outside, which was pretty exciting.
Which part of India is that? Is just to give us some geographical.
I flew into it's in Rajasthan, so I flew into Delhi and then I flew to Jaisalmer from Delhi.
Wow, man! And were there numerous other speakers there as well? Or?
Yeah, they had quite a few speakers. They invited me as a fellow, so that means that like they have a lot of their speakers who they collect from different parts of the world, but they also have people they invite who are younger and who they sponsor to come. So that was pretty exciting. Because
I had a look on the website and I kind of feel like you might have been the youngest speaker. Or
no. They had some younger ones, yeah.
But that's pretty cool. Like, can you maybe tell us why they identified you as someone that they wanted to hear from?
We have a connection with Inc. because my sister spoke there in 2012.
Okay.
And so they know about us, and they know about the bamboo work we're doing. And I actually applied for the fellowship. So
Yeah,
it's not. It wasn't like they picked me out of the straw. I applied to.
yeah.
To go.
And so was it like how long did you speak for? Like a TED Talk length, half an hour?
6 minutes.
6 minutes.
Yeah, it's a tiny.
But was it like, that's 6 minutes can be a long time.
It's a lot harder to write a 6-minute talk than a 20-minute talk.
Yeah, it would be, because like I'm sure that's a big challenge, is like trying to get all your ideas and the message across in such a short space of time, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So what else has been happening? Like, can you maybe describe to us where we're sitting and where we are right now?
So you're in my farmhouse.
Yep.
This house was originally built as a place for someone to stay who was running a bamboo foundation on the land that is now the Kulkul farm. And it was left kind of to ruin. We ended up moving from out of the bamboo foundation land, or my father did, and the person who was supposed to start it went on to other things. But so it was left in a bit of a ruin, and then I came back to Bali in 2012, and in 2013 he was a little bit, like, you should start a farm. And I was like, I don't know. He's like, I have a farm just here. And I was like, okay. And so he knew I was interested in agriculture and in permaculture. And so I kind of rented this piece of land from him and fixed up this house. And then my wife and I moved into it. And so it's a little bamboo house with a thatch roof, built with no drawings and not very much.
No design.
Well, I wouldn't say no design, because I feel like carpenters don't get the credit they deserve for the kind of designing they're capable of. But yeah, I had a sketch. I had a Balinese guy make a sketch, but we took the existing structure that was kind of built on the fly when Green School, which is next door, was opened, and it was like, yeah, we got to throw up another house over there. So in those days, that's how we did it. We just threw up another house, and I added an extension, so I have a bedroom, because it was
like a loft upstairs.
Well, there's 2 lofts upstairs. The original place just had like 1 room and a loft, and so we added another room on the end.
So is that the start of your official journey into bamboo construction and design?
No, I mean, it's literally kind of learned about it through osmosis in the beginning. My official introduction was probably growing up in a little mushroom-shaped house my sister designed, which, she's famous for her mushroom house she built when she was 9, or my mother built for her when she was 9, but she designed, at least conceptually.
Yeah, cool.
So bamboo is just a part of our everyday life when I was growing up, because we're in Bali, and it is a part of the backdrop of being in Bali. But when I was 17, I came back for the summer, and I was looking for a project to do to add to my portfolio, so to speak, because that's what you do when you're 17. You start looking for projects so that you can get into university. And I built a house for a couple that lived across the river from my family's home, and their house was falling apart, so we built them a really beautiful little bamboo house.
Wow, out of bamboo.
Yeah. So I was 17, had no idea, but found some carpenters and got my friend involved, and we built a house out of bamboo for them over the summer, and it was really, really sweet. Yeah.
That would have been so satisfying.
Yeah, it was pretty wild, It was pretty wild. Like we were tearing down their kitchen, and I noticed all the blocks for their kitchen were different sizes. And it turned out that this guy had mined the stone out of the river himself. And so that's why they're all different. So like his kitchen, he had literally etched it out of the riverbank, and I was like, really? You know, it's like this really beautiful old man. And so I felt so bad that we were tearing down this house. So what I did was I took those blocks and we rebuilt his new kitchen with those blocks, because I was like, you know, there's just so much soul in these rocks.
No way, like big river stones, like cobblestones, and he'd carved them into squares and stuff like that.
Like sandstone.
Sandstone.
It's like a porphyry or a sandstone.
Yeah.
It's like really like a lava ash that's been compressed. And so it's soft, but the river was a good, 20 meters down. Like it was like a 20-minute probably walk. So he probably had to take like 3 stones or 4 stones at a time. Right?
No way.
And that was interesting to realize how much we take for granted and how much industrial materials kind of how much they help us, but also how much they take away from the process, right?
Yeah. We take a lot for granted when we can just buy it on demand, and we don't really think about where it came from. And so with you, I was just thinking, so can you maybe give us, like, you grew up in a village in the jungle in Sabankaja? Is that where you grew up?
No. So I grew up in Payangan.
Where's that?
Payangan's in north of Ubud, so it's now home to a lot of fancy hotels, actually. But at the time, it was one hotel and then a lot of really pristine riverbank with probably some of the best kind of river views in Bali. It's where Como Shambhala now is. So we live next door to Como Shambhala on a piece of land.
Okay.
And I grew up there, and it was only 20 minutes away from Ubud Center. But at that time, when my mother arrived there in the early 90s, it was literally like a lot of the women had never left the village, and it was like she took them to Bali for the first, or she took them, sorry, not to Bali, she took them into Ubud for the first time.
No way. And you, growing up there, like, and I was just thinking this as you were speaking before, like, we're sitting here surrounded by like natural materials, like it's bamboo, it's wood. I think the only thing is, there's tiles on the ground, but then there's like a thatched roofing. I really feel like being surrounded by natural materials for a lot of your life must have a profound impact on your sense of empathy for the environment. Because, like, for me, before I came to Bali, I was living in a concrete house, not concrete, like brick house, and then I'd go to work and I was in brick buildings and concrete surrounded all the time. Like, so since I've moved here, I've never been so surrounded by nature ever, and it must be, when you travel internationally, say back to Canada or other areas of the world, how do you feel when you're in those environments? Do you feel an anxiety?
No, not at all. Not at all. I love cities.
Because it's a novelty.
Cities. It's a novelty. I don't think I want to live there, but I really love I think you never really know what it's like to be somebody else. You never really know whether you have more empathy than somebody else. You can kind of make conjectures about it, kind of think like, maybe I do, but you don't really know, right? So when people ask me, like, what was it like? I'm like, I don't know. It was the way it was. And I feel like I definitely care about the environment a lot. And I definitely see that other people care less about the environment. And sometimes I get frustrated by the fact that I don't care more. Like, a lot of the time if you're honest with yourself, there's just things you do and you just don't want to change it, even if you know that you should. And I think that's really the edge of like where the conversation kind of needs to start with people. Like, okay, we don't really care about the trees or the fact that there's palm oil in our soap. We just want to use the soap because we like the smell and it lathers nicely and it's the right price, right? And the people selling us the soap really know that. and that's why it's okay. So developing that empathy where you're like, no, actually, I do care about those rainforests that are quite a long way away. I've never been there. Requires to really believe in something outside of yourself, right? And I think that when you're in nature, when you work in nature, you have a hard time denying that there's a bigger conversation going on, and you're a very small piece in it all. You don't actually matter nearly as much as your ego likes to believe you do.
Wow, man, it's so good. That's really good, and it's true. And I can't believe you mentioned ego. I've been talking a lot about ego. Like I was talking to Tim Fidgel the other day. He was on the podcast actually, and he was talking about this shedding of ego, and there's, especially when it comes to, I guess, sometimes with even in like environmental activism or trying to change behavior patterns, we still carry this ego into those things and everything we do. But just listening to you speak, it's like, it's when it's just part of your life, and it just becomes so innate. You're not really concentrating on, I'm going to try and save the world because it's going to make me feel good or look good. It's just like, it's just what we do. It's just how we live. So when you grew up, like in I guess, is it a mountainous area of Ubud? It's in the mountains a little bit.
It's a little bit in the mountains. So it's not, I wouldn't call it, it's on the way to the mountain, let's put it that way. So there's definitely some hills involved.
Yeah, right.
It's kind of a straight shot north.
And so when you were growing up there, like, what was your schooling? Was it in Bali or was it internationally?
Yeah, so I went to an international school. I think I had a bit of a split life as a kid, to be honest. I grew up driving 45 minutes to an hour to get to school every morning because there was only one international school at the time. And that was from like second grade. I think I was kind of homeschooled / unschooled until second grade.
Did you say unschooled?
My mom was like, "Oh, it's time to send you to school now." And I'd gone to a smaller school before that. But my real experience being, in what most people would feel like as school was when I was 7, I went to the Bali International School, and it was a long way from where we lived, at least for a 7-year-old. 45 minutes to an hour is quite a long commute every morning. And I really, how do I say that? I guess I really just didn't like that drive, and then I didn't like going to school, and then I had this whole other life in the village with a bunch of Balinese kids. So that was quite interesting, looking back on where I had this kind of, for a certain
contrast.
Yeah, a certain contrast. Yeah, for a certain amount of the day I was kind of like wearing shoes. I think the shoes were as a kid, it's like that time I would take my shoes off after school. I'd be like waiting to take my shoes off, and then I had a bunch of Balinese friends in the village I grew up in, and then I had this whole other school life separate, and I really didn't do very well in primary school. Later on, I like school, but in the beginning, I'm quite dyslexic, so that was not really fun.
Did you feel supported with that at school?
I mean, I was supported by my parents, and the school was kind of in denial. They're like, he's fine, He's like, I don't know how they rationalized it, but the fourth grade teacher would tell me how okay I was, and then my parents would be like, no, your reading is not, where it should be. So they sent me to tutoring, and I think they did everything they could have done given the situation, but it was pretty traumatic for a 9-year-old. So when I was 12, my mom actually ended up taking me to New York to go to a school that was, specifically for dyslexics. So I spent 2 years there, or 3 years there, and that really helped me a lot, actually. So I was really privileged to get to do that, and sorted out if nothing else, my confidence, because I was surrounded by a bunch of other dyslexic kids, and some of them were a little strange, but a lot of them were really gifted and had kind of wild talents, even though they didn't really operate in normal society. So in the way that was expected of them as school kids. So
it's always the way.
So I did that, and then from there I went to school in Canada, and also in...
So high school, middle school, high school in Canada, or?
I did middle school in Canada, then I did a year in Australia.
Did you?
Yeah, I went to Timber Tops.
Where's that?
It's Geelong Grammar ninth grade
down
campus.
In Victoria.
Yeah, down in Victoria, yeah. They toughen me up down there. Lots of chopping wood and hiking and skiing and
it's cold. It's cold
and
down
cold there. And lighting our own fires to heat our unit. So that was interesting. And then I went to Canada and I finished school there.
Which part of Canada was it?
British Columbia. So my mom really wanted me to have some experience being Canadian, because by that point I was 18 and I'd never lived in Canada. So
wow.
I spent 2 years living in Canada because I'm a Canadian.
Yeah. Can I just go back to that time in New York when you went to that specific school? Would you reflect on that as a good time, a happy time in your life?
I mean, the first year or two were pretty challenging. It was a big shift, right? Private school in New York, from no shoes in Bali, and like kind of the inconvenience of going to school during the day, but then having this kind of other life in the evening and in the afternoon, where you're speaking a different language and doing very different activities with a whole different culture. So when I got to New York, it was like, oh my God, this is like a totally different situation. It was like a suit and tie kind of situation, right? So
that's why I was curious, because like that is pretty much the biggest contrast you could get in living environments.
Yeah.
You went from like the outskirts of Ubud, which is amazing jungle, beautiful, to literally the concrete jungle of New York.
Well, it was upstate New York, so I still had some nature.
Okay.
So it wasn't that bad, but just the mentality and the way it was different, right? But then I settled in there and I made friends and I felt really good. But then I was kind of uprooted again, because my dad was like, you have to go to this incredible school in Australia. And it kind of sounded appealing, but I was like, I don't know. I kind of want to not leave my friends. But he kind of put his foot down. And so I went to Australia, and I'm actually grateful, because as I got older, the scene in New York wasn't great. The boarding school scene isn't the best influence. So
yeah, I can imagine.
So, but then I was like, when you're that age, you really want to be with your peer group. So I actually went back to my school in New York after Australia, and then I realized, actually, I had kind of outgrown it. So after a year and a half there, I went to, my mom was like, you should really come to Canada. She had moved back to Canada.
And that's where you did your high schooling, or a few years of high school?
That's where I actually had to redo grade 11, because the school was like, you need to pass the provincial examinations, and you can't pass the provincial examinations unless you do.
All right.
Both years. And I was like, this is crazy. But I did it, and I really liked that school, so that was good.
I always ask people this. Was there a particular teacher that really stood out for you during your schooling years?
Oh, man,
or not? And it's okay if it's not, but I always like to ask that, because I'm just curious.
I feel like there was probably a lot of teachers that
There's a few.
stood out. Yeah. I had a teacher named Miss Gilbert, an English teacher, and I didn't like English, but somehow the way she did English, I really loved. She really brought current affairs into literature, and introduced us to concepts that are important, like feminism and consumerism and postmodernism. Reading like The Great Gatsby and that kind of thing. So reading Catcher in the Rye and realizing realizing a lot, so
Did she make it more like real, like linking it to like real world scenarios and just increase the significance of it?
well, a little bit, yeah. Like she kind of connected, like she'd connect. We read a book about a girl who was raped as a teenager, and then she then connected that to the reality of how many women are abused, right? And I think that's really important for a young person to hear, right? When you're coming into your sexuality.
Yeah. It's such a delicate time, those teenage years. Like, I always reflect on qualities of teachers that I really identified with, and there wasn't many. Like, for me, school was just the most traumatic time. And like, actually, no, I had a really good social life at school. I did, but I left school feeling completely dumb and completely inadequate, and I think I probably should have been diagnosed dyslexic or ADHD, but I never was. But I just couldn't sit still. I couldn't concentrate for a second, But the teachers that stick out for me are the ones that were just like tolerant and patient and kind with who I was, and just go, yeah, that's what you like, and that's okay. That's cool. You can be, just be nice to people, but if you can't concentrate and you can't do this, like, they just tolerated me, and that's all I needed. And then paradoxically, I would then start trying to learn in their classes because they had that approach with me, and just like they weren't trying to control me and trying to restrict me, and I guess as a teacher myself, that's something I'm striving towards, is just developing that sort of higher level of empathy for an individual and their needs.
Yeah, I think that's important. I also think, I struggle. I'm not a technically a teacher, and the act of dealing with kids and young adults and teaching them is like a feat that I don't know if I want to tackle. It's a very, very like noble thing to be focused on. But a lot of work, as far as I can tell, a lot of emotional work, and a lot of, like just being able to really meet so many different people where they're at. But I struggle with, I think there's definitely something to be said how like we've really dehumanized education by making it so systematic. But then like the other side of that is like, if you make it too personal, you're really kind of feeding somebody's like ego.
Oh, that's so true. I was talking about this the other day, and also
then they're really entitled, and they're like, well, that's not really for me, and you lose that kind of group solidarity, and you end up kind of self-absorbed, I think, and again, like I just worry about that, because there's this kind of balance. Like sometimes, yes, you really need to be empathetic and listen to the needs of the person, but other times you really just need them to suck it up and like do what everybody else is doing and stop being so self-involved. So
yeah, and not make it about you as the teacher, and just be a leader and go, like, I'm a leader, I'm not your friend.
Yeah, but also not let the student make it about them. But again, that's just my that's just my kind of layman's idea about it. I don't have any experience actually dealing with kids. But
like I think you probably do. Like, I think you'd have your challenges as well. I mean, you're dealing primarily with adults who are often at a higher level of education. They've already had tertiary education, and things like that. I mean, do you come up against group management issues? Yeah.
I have once in a while. I mean, usually it's really good that we're really privileged to have so many incredible people just really excited to be here, and I think having the fresh blood of people that aren't from here, and then they're here and they get to experience this, and how much just gratitude and appreciation really keeps me grateful and appreciative. Otherwise I get kind of jaded.
Does it keep you inspired?
It does definitely keep me inspired. It's like new life, new blood. Because we're in a bit of a bubble here with the farm and with Bamboo U and with Green Camp. We've created this whole green bubble, right? So having people come in from the outside helps burst that a little bit for me. But we get a few characters. We call them, people that need special attention. And we do our best just to laugh it off. It's usually a short period of time, and we just do our best to meet their needs. Yeah. But yeah, there's like a minority of people that really need extra attention, right? And that takes like a lot more energy than the other people. So that's
yeah, it can be draining, hey.
Yeah.
But the teenagers, yeah, they're a whole, like you said, they are a whole nother beast. And I I think it's the fundamental issue for all teachers is, yeah, you can be a really good educator with really good knowledge and even really good strategies, but until you know how to manage a group of teenagers, like that is the craft, that is the art of teaching.
Yeah.
In my opinion, and I feel like if you have that foundation, that can translate into like every other aspect of your life. Because I really don't. It can be so difficult, but it can be so beautiful as well. And that's sort of where I'm at the moment. I'm always like, it's this.
What grade are you teaching?
Just high school, grades 9 to 12.
Yeah, that's the. You're in the thick of it.
Mate, the hormones are raging.
Yeah.
The hormones are heavy, you know. And like physiologically, like, you know, they look and present like they're older, but there's aspects of their brain that haven't actually developed yet, you know, and they still haven't developed. I don't know if it's the frontal lobe or the part that knows how to regulate emotions, and the part. I mean, I think adults struggle with that.
The reasoning part.
The reasoning part, you know. But the thing is, once you're aware of that, it makes dealing with them so much easier. Okay, because you don't expect them to be a certain way. But so your schooling years were a mixture of Bali, New York, Canada, and which is really interesting. Not a lot of people would have had that sort of diverse range of experiences there. And then you are in Australia as well. And then you transitioned back to Bali when you were finished with your schooling in Canada, or?
No, I went to, I did. I came back to Bali for 6 months. I helped as the translator / gopher. I don't know how to describe it exactly, but I was running around for Jorg Stam, who my dad had hired to be the kind of the chief builder for Green School, and he needed a translator and an assistant. So I was his guy.
No way.
So and I spoke Indonesian and Balinese, and so it was a good job for me to. So I spent like 5 months, literally running around with like a voice recorder, like remembering things for him. This is before WhatsApp. We had a voice recorder, and that was like cool because it avoided too many extra emails. So I did that, and then I went traveling for a few months. I went backpacking, and then I went back to college. And to be honest, I was, when I left high school, I was kind of disillusioned and didn't really want to go to college. But then after traveling, I realized I really liked learning. So I found this pretty eccentric liberal arts school in Olympia, Washington. And I enrolled in a program called Trees and Humans. And one of my criteria for college was like, how do I find somewhere with lots of trees and lots of people? Because it was like, I wanted both. And so the Pacific Northwest kind of fits that quite nicely. So I went there, and I got a BA there, and then I went to California and worked on a permaculture farm, and did a program on a permaculture farm, as well as I worked in a cafe in a little town in Northern California. And then after that, my sister was getting married, and my visa was up in the U.S. To be honest, part of me really wanted to stay, but I had a humanities degree, so I wasn't gonna get somebody to sponsor me to have a job in the U.S. Unfortunately. So I came back to Bali, kind of wondering what I was gonna do. My sister was getting married, and then I got a job with this permaculturist doing a garden, and I ended up with like 6 or 7 different jobs making gardens. Like landscapes. So I started a little landscape company. And from there, that evolved into wanting to do something more educational. So I founded the Cool Farm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Northern California sounds so cool. Like, we're not talking San Francisco.
Yeah, just north of San Francisco.
North of San Francisco?
Yeah, a little town called Balinis,
Okay.
which is like this hippie town where they had torn down the sign so that tourists would know how to get there. You know,
I like
it was famous because there was no sign to get there because the community had like overthrown the mayor, and like,
Yeah, that's so cool.
I mean, it's, you know, full of a lot of rock stars living there because it was
Okay.
it was cool, but it had its roots as this kind of hippie like place that had kind of resisting society at large.
Not conforming.
No, not conforming. So I was living in a national park. There was like a permaculture farm in the national park that had been kind of authorized to be this experimental station. So it was like really, really cool. Yeah.
That sounds awesome. Like, was it just a natural move towards permaculture for you? Like, it just happened. I mean, you did that course, like Trees and Humans, and then did you sort of... When did the word permaculture enter your life?
So actually, my father employed his university friend when he had the jewelry business to turn his factory landscape into a food garden when I was about 9.
Amazing.
So I used to hang out with them because I was a nature kid. I loved chickens and animals, and so I was kind of a flying kite. So I was attracted to what they were doing. So I learned about permaculture there, and then I took a PDC when I was 16, and learned about it there, and then got more into it as a teenager. Started an environmental club at school. You know, realized global warming was a problem. Wanted to do something.
Just grew
meaningful.
from there.
Yeah. So it grew from there. Yeah.
So I just want to go back to, you said you were a translator for the designer of the Harder School at Green School. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't really the designer; he was the builder. So
he was the actual builder. Okay.
He created the structural concepts, and then Aldo Lanwer was really the designer with his team, with his architecture team, and of course my dad, who was kind of fueling generating all the creativity that happened.
Yeah. What was it like being on site at that time? Like, was it just
madness?
Yeah.
Lots of tears.
Was there? Yeah.
Lots of tears. Lots of yelling.
Yeah.
Lots of magic and lots of like pride too. A lot of excitement. Like just like there's buildings like popping out of the ground like mushrooms.
Was there a feeling amongst everyone that, hey, something pretty special is happening right now?
Yeah. Already, like it was very clear. As soon as the factory started and the Aldo's kitchen, which is now the Ibuku Design Office, was built, it was pretty clear that this was unusual, and everybody had an opinion.
Okay, so the passion started coming out, and
everybody in the Bali community had an opinion, and all of a sudden all these, there's a whole lot of woodworkers that were working on this project, right? So it was like
local workers?
Yeah.
Okay.
Becoming bamboo builders.
Okay.
And it was definitely there was talk in the neighborhood.
Yeah, I mean, also like that. Not only were you you guys were trying to do that, but then there would have been that. Was there resistance from the community at the same time as well?
Which community?
Like the community of Sabang, Kaja.
No, they were great. Yeah,
they were supportive of it because they seen it as like creating jobs and revenue and things like that.
Yeah, I think any criticism usually comes from like other activists.
Okay.
You know, I mean, you mentioned earlier, it's really important to like, are you doing something to look good, or are you doing something to do good? I mean, most people are human, so there's a little bit of both in whatever they're doing. But you know, it was like it upstaged a lot of like kind of activity and also like it's very imperfect. So it's very easy to find very valid concerns. But you know, with the school, but you know, it's kind of if you they have the Japanese saying where like you hammer down the nail that sticks out, right? And so you criticize the thing that's doing something different and better a lot more than you criticize the things that are just doing things that are business as usual, even if they're way worse.
Yeah, and it's also easy because when people are like paving a new way or going into uncharted territory, they're making themselves very vulnerable as well. And it takes that, I guess, courage to allow vulnerability. And in Australia, we have a thing called, you said like nailing the nail that sticks out, you hit it down. In Australia, we call it the tall poppy syndrome. So if you've got
exactly,
the field of poppies and the one poppy, you chop it down so it's back with everyone else.
Yeah.
Or the crab in the crab pot with the crab trying to crawl out. And it's a huge part of Australian culture. If you're trying to branch out or maybe do something that's not deemed, normal or different, you would you criticize very easily. And I think the ones that actually keep going and can push through that, I think
then they're celebrated.
And then they're celebrated. Oh, like they're a visionary. But I really, really love that you said that. Well, sometimes it can get very murky, the waters, in terms of what are people's motivation. Is it because it's a reputation builder, or is it because they're actually wanting to help and do something real?
Yeah, but the honesty is usually that it's a mix, right?
Do you think it has to be a combination of both?
I think that it's commendable if you have a high level of purity in what you do, and it's purely selfless. But I don't think that's the reality for most people, and a lot of those people are doing great things, right? So it's not. I think it's important to realize that people are on their own journey, and as soon as you start criticizing their journey and being overly critical of who they are, you're already worse than they are, because it's so much easier to do that than to really look inside and go, what am I doing? And it's a tendency, and even now, there's a lot of calling out going on, and let's tear something down in the name of justice or whatever. And I think there's a role for that or a place for that, but I think it's often pointed in the wrong directions. And people just want to do it also to look good. And also to...
I'm guilty of it too.
Yeah.
I am. I have been guilty of it, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very... And also other people, if you do something differently or you do something special, other people, they somehow I feel like there's this mix of wanting to look good or being perceived to wanting to look good to other people wanting you to look good so that they look good. So it's just an interesting thing to go back to and make sure you don't get too caught up in it. We obviously, everybody wants to look good as a human, right? You want to be, we want to be... You want to
be recognized.
You want to be recognized. You want to be noble, right? We have this inherent sense, I think, that we're all actually have the capacity to be really noble creatures. We're special, right? Inherently, I believe that everybody is actually quite special, and humans. A lot of environmentalists would disagree with me, but I think humans are actually quite special as an expression of creation, right? So I think it's really important that we focus on, how do we really focus on being the best we can be and cutting through this idea of self, which is the ego you mentioned, because it's not real. It's not actually there. There's nothing, Orin is a figment of mine and a bunch of other people's imaginations. At the end of the day, we're just bones and flesh and
it's true, bro.
Vibrations.
It's funny. I was talking to a guy the other day, and he said he's got a guru, like a spiritual advisor, which was really interesting because I've never had something like that. And he said, he has to constantly be reminded by him that he's enough. Even if he does nothing, that just to be here and just be a human and just be on the planet, you're enough, and anything else is a bonus. And it's very easy to get caught up in. He was saying it gets very easy to get caught up in striving for more and this feeling of I have to be significant and I have to create or develop so I can be recognized. And I was like, yeah, good call, fair call. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a challenge, because that's what we're kind of trained to think is going to make us better. And I actually think that the more you're kind of recognized like that, it actually gets harder. I think happiness gets harder as you.
Why?
Well, I think fame is kind of this thing we celebrate, and it brings with it, I think, power, and influence. But it doesn't bring happiness. It doesn't bring fulfillment. Those things are a separate thing. It doesn't mean you can't have. Some people get to have their cake and eat it too. But I think that in reality, happiness really comes from how much the regard we have for ourselves, like how good we feel about ourselves, and then how good we feel about the people we're connected to. So like, the quality of our personal relationships as well as the way we feel ourselves. And I feel like that's often the battle I have, is like not feeling good enough. It's like what he's saying. It goes in both directions, right? Where it's like, yes, it's not good enough, so I need to strive for more. It's also like I'm not good enough, so I don't deserve anything, right? So it's
but
kind
what
of
are you measuring that against, out of curiosity? That feeling of not being good enough?
I mean, you measure it against your family and your peers, right? Like, I think that's most
and
people
around you,
and the people around you, yeah. In relation to who you respect is usually, And in fact, if you listen to like self-help books, they'll tell you if you want to be more, set your reference point higher, right? So I mean, my family has quite a lot of people in it that are pretty well accomplished, right? So it's definitely like a journey I've gone through, and really just trying to shift into like, well, what can I actually do to like accomplish a lot of good and not be so worried about like how good I look in it, and not really. And I mean, it's a practice because we're human, and there is that kind of incessant, I call it the incessant self, where you kind of that chatter that's like
the mind chatter.
You should really be, blah, 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 or like you could do, blah, blah, blah. And so I think moving beyond that is really important.
Yeah.
And it's every day. It's like, like it's like when you meditate, it's like now return to breathing. It's like, it's like, oh yeah, that's I'm now on an ego trip. Let's come back to like, at least let's just start by acknowledging that it's a trip. And then,
it's interesting what you said about, like I know I've done it, and I know a lot of other people that do it. They measure their worth to the people around them, and family is often the most powerful one, because obviously they're your family, and they're the closest, and they have the biggest influence. And I find that when you have family members that have had various levels of success, it can be quite it can be quite powerful in terms of being that mind, creating that mind chatter of like, well, I've got to compare myself to them, and I've got to be on the same level. But then it's like, well, when will you ever be there? And what is what is that level? What does it look like?
Figment of our imagination.
Exactly. Like, what does it actually look like explicitly? Like, so it's kind of like, when I think of it like that, it's just a flawed thought pattern, because you're on your own journey.
Yeah, and I think it's the level you should be going for is like, the level that is your capacity, right? Like, I believe that everybody is given a cup. The metaphor is like everybody's given a cup, and like that cup is their capacity. And like people's cups are different sizes. That's a reality. We're not actually, we may all be seen as equal in the eyes of God or our creator, or however you want to, however you affiliate, but
Yeah.
but in like physical reality, we're not equal. We're not actually. It's a beautiful thing to strive for. But I think your cup is your capacity, and like different people have different size cups. They have a different realm or range of possibilities in their daily life and in their potential. And if you have a small cup that's full, you're a much better human than if you have a big cup that's empty.
That's really profound, man.
So I think that it's really, really important to focus on, am I really reaching my capacity and my ability to serve, instead of like other people's ideas about that. And that's challenging, like I definitely struggle with that. It's easy to kind of superimpose, especially with your family, other people's ideas, and then like returning back to like, wait. And then also the media and like how other people profile you, right? So like you might be one person inside, but then other people decide you're something else, and those things interact, right? So
when you did that ink talk, I noticed on the website like past speakers, and I think even some of the speakers that were there, like pretty like famous people, like James Cameron was one of the people I've seen on the list. I think the guy that created The Simpsons.
Yeah, Matt Groening. Yeah.
And I was thinking, like, how did you feel then being in the same capacity as people like that?
Terrified.
Yeah.
Terrified and out of place.
And how did you manage that?
I mean,
well, why out of place? You wouldn't have been there if you weren't meant to be there.
No, for sure, but that's the feeling, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I had a lot of support. I know that I'm good at speaking in public, and I prepared. So and then you just have to face being afraid.
Okay, so just those feelings of self-doubt just came, which everyone would experience to a degree.
Yeah, well, not so much self-doubt, just fear.
Okay.
Like there's all these people watching me, and like they've flown me here, and I have to tell them something interesting. Like I have a responsibility to tell them something interesting, and it's hard to see. For me, it's hard for me to see what I do as interesting on like on a bigger scale. Like it's hard for me to see.
You're living it.
It's hard for me to see what other people think's interesting, and what I think's interesting about it doesn't necessarily line up with like the popular opinion of what's interesting about it. So it took some time. Luckily, my parents are also. My sister and my father have both gone to like the Big TED, right? So they had some tips on how to give a talk. So that was helpful, and I think it's important. It was just important, like for me to, I was like, why do I really want to do this? Like, my mom had just passed away, and I was like, wasn't really what I wanted to do, to be honest, at that moment, even though it was a really great opportunity. But I was like, I should definitely do this. It was also really good exposure, and I struggle with getting myself out there. Like I kind of want to be in the back, and don't really my story is like not really like wanting to be in the limelight, and like not really wanting to have both feet on the spot, where then, because that's what really opens you up for criticism, I think, and that's scary for me. Okay. So you've avoided it. I've avoided it in a lot of ways. But I was like, okay, like but then I kind of resent it too, right? Because then it's like, wait a second, like I'm like downplaying or not really receiving, you do something well, and then you don't receive when people go, oh, great job, just like with little things. I'm like, so learning how to get out of that.
Or if you see other people doing things that you've far surpassed and they're getting recognition, like I know my ego struggles with that. I see someone doing, I won't go into details, but doing something that I may have already done and I know have done better, but then they're being really recognized for it. Yeah, my ego just fucking hates it. It hates it,
And I guess my feeling is if you end up in the position where you are that person who's like, maybe other people have done better, but you're getting the for whatever reason,
That's the other side of it. Yeah.
you feel it too. You're like, who am I to be?
You know what? I've never been in that position, Oren.
Who am I to be the one? So that also comes in.
I didn't even think of that. So there's feelings there too, like
of course,
feeling
yeah,
of like being an imposter or
not so
not
much
an
an
imposter,
imposter,
undeserving
or insecure, or like there's so many other people out there that do a good job at whatever they're doing who aren't recognized, right? So
Yeah.
that's definitely a thing, right? And I mean, if you look at like movie stars and musicians and politicians, like it's not easy on them. They don't end up. A lot of them end up with issues, right? It's not actually. I think part of the flaw is like that we really celebrate that, and I think that's actually, in a lot of ways, much more of a burden than just being a normal person.
Yeah.
I think you have a much higher level of contentment if you're kind of a happy, healthy, normal human who's like a lot of other people and content with what they have. I think you're probably a much better suited for having a fulfilling kind of life. But the problem is we don't just want a fulfilling life. We want a life, we want an interesting story. And that's part of the ego. And like we want to know that we've gone on a journey, right? And we want to know that we've grown and that we've like succeeded and failed. And so it becomes a very complicated dynamic, I believe.
I hope you don't mind me asking this. And do you feel that you've been, throughout your life in various stages, thrust into the limelight because of the accomplishments of maybe your family or your father with various things?
For sure, yeah.
Like by default.
By default, but you're also thrust into the shadow. So it's a paradox because yes, you end up kind of close to the limelight, but it's a little bit like, a lot of the time it's a little bit like watching from backstage more than it's like being thrust to the limelight, because it doesn't feel like that. And also like it's really important, like my family is in the limelight in a very small space, so if I don't want to be in that, I just go somewhere else and then I get to be a normal human, like
go and hang in the farm
or wherever. Like there's not like, I can go to Canggu and nobody, you know what I mean? Like, it's so I feel grateful that like it's not so bad. But yeah, I feel like I feel the shadow a lot more than the limelight, because then people just associate me with them. So there's a lot more effort that has to get taken to really get to express who you are to that person. If they know, right? And if they don't know, you just get to express who you are, right?
Gotcha.
So I have a lot of opportunity because of them. And I want to do my best to use that opportunity in a good way.
It's amazing.
But I also think that it's important to recognize that it's actually not like a rosy situation. I'm grateful for and proud of who they are, but there is that sense of being like, okay, so instead of being Orin, you're so and so's son, or you so and so's sibling. So that becomes like. But
that scenario, in my opinion, plays out regardless of where you're from or what your family background is in any walk of life. I mean, whether it's your situation or the situation of someone in Australia or India or wherever, I feel that it's a very common scenario and I feel like it's especially for young men, to be honest, like feeling like there's this almost like social expectation that you need to follow in the footpath of your father or your parents or your family. I know I've experienced it to various degrees throughout my life, and it's just interesting to hear another perspective on it, because I think it's the same like in so many people's lives.
Yeah,
it's just packaged different, and this is how it's been packaged for you. But what I want to go to now is the Cool Farm. Like, I mean, just for the listeners, like it's an amazing space that's producing, it's using the principles of permaculture, producing yields of what types? Like what kind of things are you producing?
So, I mean, to be perfectly frank, I think our main yield is education and inspiration for people. People in the modern world will actually pay you more to take a photograph and hear a nice story. You want to make sure it's a true story, not a fiction, but they want to hear a nice story and take a photograph of a vegetable. That will make you more money than selling that vegetable.
Okay.
So it's kind of a strange, bizarre thing.
Well, it's great because you're being of service through education.
Yeah, it's a great thing, but it's just bizarre to think that we've so undervalued our food as a physical thing that the myth around the food, meaning like the fact that it was grown well by people who have like used their actual hands, and that the growing that food is, keeping that soil healthy and keeping other people healthy and also keeping the farmer who works there healthy. That people want to hear that story so badly that if you run a tour, you're going to make more money to support the farm than actually selling the produce because the price of vegetables here is so low. So what we do is we focus on education, and we also have a working farm. But most of our farm supplies in-house kind of restaurant operations. So one for course participants, another for kids camps, and for Green School, and then also for our farm stand at Green School. So that's how we kind of do it. So the revenue from the farm stand supports the farmers and the farming operation, and that's also because you cut out all the middlemen, right? Most farmers have so many other people marking it up. Like the guy carrying the vegetables from the farm to the store will make just as much as the farmer will. And that's not actually just, because the farmer does way more work, right? But that's just the way our economics work. So the only way to grow organic food that costs more because it's not subsidized by cheap fertilizers and fossil fuels and destroying soil is by getting more for the vegetable. And you can either charge more or you get it closer to the end consumer, or you do both, right? And that's really the organic farming movement is really based at this point on those things. And a lot of people criticize, oh yeah, but then people who really need healthy food don't get it because they can't afford it. And my point is like, well, if you can't afford it, then give some of your money to buy that for somebody, because the more people invest in organics, the cheaper it'll become over time and the more accessible and normal it'll become. And just being critical and then justifying that to go to Costco to buy food that has been produced by people that are being treated unfairly and being grown on an earth that is being treated unfairly is not actually fair at all. And that's not to say you should judge the people who can't afford to buy organic food at all, right? That's not the point, because they people with less money, I think in general, are often more sustainable than people with more money. And people who are less educated are probably by default, especially here in Bali, like, the Balinese are inherently more sustainable than the Westerners who are like me, who are talking about being green. But, part of me feels like the people that really need to know about being more sustainable are the people that are not being very sustainable. So like, we shouldn't go off trying to like, let's tell the underprivileged people how sustainable they need to be. It's just not fair. Like, what they need is like, if you're poor, you need more money. And you don't need people judging you for how you're living. Or telling you how to live. You need, if you're ignorant, you need people to find compelling ways to present information to you, right? And it's not to say there isn't benevolence and people who just genuinely don't want to care.
Yeah.
But that's a separate issue from, I think, the general state of affairs, where most people do want to do good. Most people, if given it to them in the right way, will actually take opportunity to be better. And if you're in a position where you are thinking about sustainability and you are wealthy, like myself, that's, I think, having that conversation with the other people that are like that, we're really like making the biggest footprint. We're consuming the most, flying around the most, eating the most. We really have a responsibility to look at how do we do that less.
Would you say that then the Cool Farm could be described as like a prototype for the world of the possibilities of the future of farming and sustainability?
I wouldn't go as far as saying we're a prototype. I think that's a little bit probably lofty, but I think that we're definitely adding to the conversation.
But I sort of feel like I say that because you have so many people traveling from all over the world to come and do the various courses that you have here, and then they take that information back to their parts of the world. It gets dispersed. It's like, well, this is what they did here. How can we do it on? So I don't know. I think it's beautiful that's why. Would you say that's the fundamental of what you are hoping for it to be? Is just like a flagship in a way, or one of the many flagships? I want to add.
I mean, we're a business, right? So part of it is the reality of needing to get a certain number of people through the doors to pay the bills.
You have to be pragmatic.
Yeah. So there's that side of it, but the other side of it is like, we're really providing inspiration and education. I think we're adding an important element to the sustainability conversation, around like focusing on simplicity and essentials. Combining, we like to talk about tradition and innovation and combining those things, remembering the past and also having future ideas in mind. So focusing on the essential simplicity of like basic, most people don't know how to plant a vegetable anymore.
It's crazy.
Our grandparents, almost everybody's great grandparents were planting vegetables on a regular basis. They would have laughed at us for running a course on how to plant vegetables, because that's just something you learn as a human.
Let's do it.
So there's that side of it, and there's also like the beauty. There's the beauty, which is, I think, really important. People are not like thinking about in the modern world, in the built environment, things are really ugly. I mean, they say beauty's in the eye of the beholder, and I believe that's true to an extent, but it's also really, really true that a lot of people can recognize beauty, even if it's not their taste, it's not their, even if like with a person, like they might not be your type, but like if they're beautiful, you can get a consensus, right? And it's the same with buildings and with environments, right? You might not want to live in a bamboo house that's like this crazy curvy thing, but you're still definitely going to acknowledge that it's beautiful. There's a very small minority that's going to... I think that's
what's attracting a lot of people from around the world here is the beauty of...
Beauty.
They see the pictures of the bamboo structures that you create in Bamboo U, and they're drawn to that.
Beauty. Beauty is our doorway into like a transcendent place of ourselves. It's like beauty is that door that takes us out of that ego and into that like, wow, like we're so much more than what we imagine. And that's so important. That's like, if you take that away, it's like you create an environment of emptiness. I mean, green school is a really good example. It's sustainable. It's all made out of bamboo. If they're ugly bamboo structures, nobody would have come. And the bamboo buildings definitely don't keep people at green school. They probably drive a certain number of people away from green school if they realize that they're not necessarily up for the heat and the rain and like the elements, right? But it is what brings people to green school. The reason it's well known is because of those structures.
I see it on a daily basis.
Yeah,
with the tour groups that come through. They're just like,
like the education for them becomes an afterthought. But the people learning there and teaching there, they're doing it because of the education, right? The people are staying because there's incredible people and incredible activities happening. and incredible knowledge being shared in those buildings, right? So it's this kind of interaction, but the beauty is really key, and I think that's really what makes us unique, is that this kind of commitment to it.
So you're saying the beauty also like it attracts but also inspires creativity.
Yeah, and then when that beauty is layered on top of sustainability, because a lot of like early buildings that were like efficient and sustainable were like kind of these socialist blocks, you know. It's like reminded you of like they just like kind of just not focused on beauty, because often you sacrifice efficiency and you sacrifice utility for beauty, right? There's this dance, right? There's a lot of times when it's not necessarily as efficient to make it beautiful, but then if it's not beautiful, like you kind of wonder like you there's a hidden
Boring.
cost there that we don't know how to fully articulate. We're like, well, you know,
so
nice.
Is that what's driving the art? If you can meld that beauty and functionality together, that's what maybe you're striving for with the engineering and construction of bamboo.
Yeah, well, that's good design.
That combination
right?
of beauty and function.
Yeah, that's good design.
That's good design.
It doesn't whatever field you're in.
But are those two things, do you think, driving the design process?
I think that it's a big part of it. Yeah, the beauty, the playing between like how do we make it a functional space? How do we make it a beautiful space? And how do we make it a sustainable space?
So how many courses of the Bamboo U course do you run a year?
We're growing pretty quickly. It started with 1, and then it went to 3, and then it went to 5, and now we're doing 5 Bamboo U immersions. That's our big course, our flagship course, and then we have we're doing a 5-day design and carpentry course right now.
Yeah, right.
We do a few 3-day courses. We're starting a tour that's once a week. So it's growing, and we have a team now, which is really exciting. So it's Maria and I started Bamboo U.
So Maria's your wife.
Yeah. In collaboration with my sister Alora, and you know, it's in a lot of ways our bamboo world is really grounded in a family affair, right? And that gives it a lot of. It makes it challenging to work sometimes, but it also gives it a lot of beauty, and is what helps make it possible.
So cool, man! Like what an amazing thing to do together as a couple as well. Like it's such a legacy. You know, would you say it's something that you're the most passionate about, or would you say it's the pinnacle of your life's work at this moment, at this stage?
I don't know. I don't really think like that. I don't think in terms of mosts or pinnacles, because you know, you never know. With life, you don't know when you're at the top or when you're at the bottom, because you don't know if it's not like a mountain. It's not like you go, okay, now I'm at the top. You don't know where you're going. You know, your best guess is not necessarily, all you can do is kind of cast. In a lot of ways, I think like you kind of sing your life. And I mean that, like, I'm a terrible singer, but you kind of sing your life into being, in the sense that what you say has a huge influence in what actually happens, and what you are doing is this kind of, and where you go is this relationship between circumstances you can't control and what you're adding and what you're creating. And so I think Bamboo U is definitely like the edge of my envelope.
Okay. It's
challenging me, and it's really inspiring to see how many people are coming.
Yeah.
I have a really hard time focusing on like one passion. I have a lot of opportunities, and one of my issues is not knowing when to stop and what to focus on and what not to focus on. And that I end up kind of burning out a little bit sometimes. So Bamboo U is definitely one of the most exciting projects that I get to work on.
Here's a question for you. Like, what happens if you have someone come from a country where bamboo is not abundant? Are they going to benefit from it? Are they benefiting from the design principles, or?
I mean, the way it's set up is very experiential. So like, they're going to benefit just by being here. Even if they left and only remembered how much fun they had, they'd still be benefiting. So that's how I set it up. We had a flight attendant join because she didn't know what to do, and went on a trash walk with my father, and had been like fired by the crown prince of some Middle Eastern nation. I don't remember which one. She was flight attendant for their private jet, you know, and ended up in Bali and didn't know what she was doing with her life. And so she's at Bamboo U and, like, you know, didn't know a pole from a rafter,
No way.
or bamboo from an oak tree, but she was inspired by it, right? So I think it's really important the way we're framing the education. It's a very inclusive thing. Everybody's doing the same experience, like a similar experience, but everybody's going to take something away that's different. And the way we set up the course, it's really catered to meet everybody's needs.
Yeah.
So that's really exciting. But it's if you are a designer, you are going to take a lot away from it, because you're going to learn a whole lot about bamboo. We're packing 10 years of experience, not just from, like, only a small part of it is really me, right? A lot of it is, 10 years of experience from Balinese craftsmen, 10 years of experience from Ibuku and that design firm and what they've added to Bamboo U, more than 10 years of experience from, like, engineers who are now investigating bamboo. Jorg comes to some of our courses, has really informed a lot of, like, what we... Jorg has come to a lot of our bamboo courses and has really inspired a lot of what we teach, because he has a lot of really interesting structural concepts.
So can you who is that exactly?
Jorg Stam's the master builder who built the heart of school. Yeah,
Thank you. Yeah.
No, it's a good to clarify.
Just want to clarify. Yeah.
So Jorg Stam, and so he took a lot of ideas from Fry Otto, who's he did the Munich Olympic Stadium, and he took those ideas and he did some bridges, and I hope I'm getting that right. But Fry Otto's an incredible German engineer, and then he took a lot of those ideas and turned them into bamboo ideas. This, like, the bamboo tower, the hyperparaboloid is a...
Is that where it's a twisted tower?
Yeah. We call it the reciprocal tower. So teaching people about that, and realizing that, like, a lot of the time we kind of associate square with efficiency, but it's not always the case. Sometimes spinning, towers made out of tapering hollow cylinders that are grass are more efficient. And making a round bamboo building can actually sometimes be cheaper than making a square bamboo building, just because of the nature of bamboo as a material, right? So that's really what it's just teaching people how to rethink design and construction. We've been so overtrained into a certain mind frame. Architects are like, they have to unlearn. They've told me, I'm not an architect, but they've told me they have to unlearn a lot of what they've learned in order to really understand the sensibility of building with bamboo. And
ironically, that's a growth mindset.
Yeah.
The willingness to go, hey, I need to unlearn my training for this, because we get so set on it. Like, well, I went to university for 4 years and I've worked in this field doing the same thing for 10 years. Like, I'm an expert. I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But
the more expert you feel, the lower your learning
the less
capacity.
You're not progressing, are you?
Yeah. The less you feel like you know anything, the more you're going to learn.
Yes. Good call, man. Just going back to the flight attendant, though, like, I was just thinking, so fundamentally, if you have someone, say, of her ability, she was still taking away, like, the ability to problem solve, the ability to communicate, the ability to, like analyze, collaborate with other people. So they're still learning that, still developing those sort of higher order skills.
Yeah, that for sure. But I feel like that would be much more appropriate for, like, kids, right?
Okay.
And teenagers. But for an adult, hopefully, probably what she's developed by that point was, in my mind, is probably like most of what she's going to know as a human, right? Like those essential skills. But as an adult, I feel like the valuable thing she's really taken away is new possibilities and inspiring. Understanding the power of building in community and getting to connect with people that are really interested and inspired. And that makes, as soon as you're surrounded by people who you feel are maybe really good at something you're not good at, you're going to start getting better at that, right? And so like we draw a lot on like the group intelligence and the power of the connections that are formed. And it becomes a course not just about what we're teaching, but it becomes a course about what everybody has to offer.
Excellent. And what they can bring.
Exactly, yeah.
That's so cool, man. Dude, it's been epic, Orin. It's been like an hour and 20 minutes.
Wow.
Where did that go?
Yeah.
So like what's next for you? Like, are you going to just continue with the Cool Farm, Bamboo U, or is there anything in the works that you're developing? Or?
I mean, that's a good question. I'm definitely going to keep driving Bamboo U forward. I've got some ideas for the farm. I really want to dial in a lot of our actual like agriculture systems. I want to do a mushroom house. I want to do more microgreens. I want to look at doing an aquaponic system. I want our market garden to be much more efficient, and not just focused as being an education space, but also being focused on like high productivity. So I'm kind of looking for the people who can help put that together right now.
Why do you want it to be high productivity?
Well, I just want it to be the best example it could be.
Okay.
And I want to be able to like, I started out kind of like, well, I want to grow the vegetables I need. But then I realized, you know what, if I'm growing vegetables, if I'm not hiring more people, I should be growing as many vegetables as I possibly can, even if I have to give some of them away, because I'm going to be teaching farmers how to be better farmers. I'm going to be growing more food that more people need. So from a social aspect, I think it makes more sense just to grow as much as we can. And so the key is finding a way to motivate the farmers to really do that, and finding the technology to support them in doing that in a sustainable way. So I'm really interested in that. I'm also really interested in growing Bamboo U into being really the kind of bona fide bamboo place, right? Like we're the bamboo mecca right now, and we're inspiring a lot of other people to build with bamboo, which is really great. But I think that like we have an opportunity to be the learning center for people to really gain a lot and do a lot of research with bamboo. So I'm looking at like, okay, how do we take it from this 11-day course into being more of like a lab or a school, where people can also come for longer periods of time, looking at diversifying into providing options for professionals to develop actual design projects. So there's that, and then also getting universities in, right? Because I think we can make the most impact with Bamboo U, not with popular courses of like just interested adults, but young designers who are going to be the future designers, and talking to them. So I'm interested in that as well. I'm also interested. I'm having a baby next year.
Congratulations, dude!
Yeah, it's pretty epic. And you know, how do I find more time to really have like family life, because it's a lot to like run a lot of this stuff. So finding more of a balance, and also spending more time farming on my own. I really enjoy working with my hands, and being someone who's in a position of leadership, I often end up not working with my own hands. And so it's kind of against the momentum for me to be like, actually, I'm going to go plant seedlings myself, and not have somebody else do it. So
dude, it's so rad to hear you say that. It
yeah.
really is. Like, even like, I know you get busy and sometimes you just can't do that. But the fact that you even have that desire to acknowledge that you need to stay connected to the land.
Yeah, I really like it. It's not like, it's not just an ideology thing. Like I really.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. Like, that's just so authentic. Like, I think that's what will, and probably makes you a really good leader in this area. That you have that passion still there.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes the passion wanes, and you're like, oh, like why am I? But then the end feeling is like, yeah, like, you know, if I'm talking about gardening or I'm talking about bamboo, like I should have my pulse on it, is the feeling.
Yeah.
Because it's very easy to just end up being the manager.
In the Bamboo U course, do you teach them the harvesting process as well?
Yeah.
They learn all that.
From harvest, treatment, design, construction.
Wow.
It's like a 10-day. It's intense.
Yeah.
Like it's
I've
not.
heard my friend just did it.
Yeah.
Lance just did it.
Oh yeah, awesome.
And he said it was just like the best thing ever. He made a chair and I sat in it the other day.
Oh yeah. I know Lance. I remember.
And he's actually now he did the course because he now wants to bring it to his classes at school.
Yeah.
Like the
awesome.
stuff that he learned. So
yeah.
see, like you're spreading.
Yeah, it's spreading. It's true. It's pretty awesome.
That's right. Cool, man. I don't know. Is there anything else you want to say, or
no?
you had enough?
Thanks for taking the time.
Thanks, bro. You too. And like, I just want to thank you for your time, and like, I will say congratulations to you and your lovely wife.
Thank you.
And just in the time I've known you, like, you've always been very approachable and giving. You know, I see that you give people your time, and I was very attracted to the Cool Farm when I first came here because I did a PDC years ago, and at my last school we developed a thing called a living classroom where it was a permaculture space on a smaller scale than this, and using the principles of permaculture, we're making no-dig gardens, and it was all about educating for soil building and soil quality, and then we had other construction processes like using the natural resources or recycled upcycling stuff to make chairs and tables and stuff like that. So I was very drawn to it, and like even just walking in here today, like I'm still very in awe of what you've achieved. Like and like you said something earlier, you said, I get a bit jaded with it, and you forget, you don't see it.
Yeah.
But like other people do, man, and you just and I
Thank
think
you.
and just I hope you know that. Like even me, who I still work in this area,
Yeah.
and even when I come over sometimes to visit, I might have a kid here on an internship or whatever.
Yeah, we've had a few good ones. Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I'm so stoked and like even your willingness to work with us on that, and it's been really significant for the kids. But coming in, I still, even this morning I wrote in, and I still get this sense of awe of the possibilities. And you said when people come from around the world, they see it, and that gives you your inspiration. So that's really cool, man. So
Yeah.
thanks for the inspiration, bro. High five.
High five.
All right, brother. Let's go. I haven't had a coffee today. Have you had a coffee today?
I have, but I'll have another one.
Dude, I need a coffee. I can't even talk properly.
Okay,
All right,
let's
brother.
go.
Ew, let's go.